Duchess Satine Kryze thought she could reform a planet of killers with glass and mirrors, but she only built a more beautiful graveyard. These fractured biomes were not meant to protect the people. They were designed to hide the truth. Let's explore how Mandalore's architectural desolation guaranteed the violent collapse of its society. To understand the weight of this tragedy, we must first ground ourselves in the brutal, unyielding history of the planet that shaped every choice Satine Kryze ever made. Mandalore is not a world that was ever meant to be tamed. It is a planet forged in war, defined by conflict, and scarred by thousands of years of battle between its people and the rest of the galaxy. Long before the rise of the Galactic Republic, long before the Clone Wars, long before Satine Kryze first walked the halls of Sundari's glass spires, the Mandalorian people built their identity around strength, resilience, and the unshakable belief that survival was earned through combat, through mastery of oneself, and through loyalty to one's clan. The Mandalorian people were not always confined to domed cities and sterile biomes. For millennia, they roamed the jagged, volcanic surface of their homeworld, forging armor from Beskar, the nearly indestructible metal found only in Mandalore's core, and building a civilization that honored courage above all else. They were a warrior race, yes, but they were also a people with a deep, abiding connection to their land, their culture, and their shared history. Their architecture reflected this. Their strongholds were carved into the mountains of Mandalore and its moons, built to withstand siege, to honor their ancestors, and to serve as both a defense against enemies and a home for their clans. Every stone, every beam, every wall was a testament to who they were. A people who did not run from conflict, a people who did not hide from their past, a people who faced the harshness of their world head-on and thrived because of it. This all changed with the Mandalorian Civil War that raged in the years leading up to the Clone Wars. The war split the Mandalorian people into two irreconcilable factions. On one side were the Traditionalists, later known as the Death Watch, who clung to the old ways of Mandalore, the warrior code, the honor of combat, and the preservation of their ancestral culture. On the other side were the new Mandalorians, led by the young Duchess Satine Kryze, who had seen the destruction that endless war had brought to her homeworld, and vowed to build a new Mandalore, one rooted in pacifism, diplomacy, and rejection of the violent past that had left their planet scarred and uninhabitable. Satine had good reason to reject the old ways. She had lived through the horror of the Civil War. She had watched her people kill each other over ancient grudges. She had seen the surface of Mandalore rendered unlivable by centuries of warfare, its atmosphere poisoned, its soil barren, its once lush landscapes turned to ash and dust. She believed that the only way for the Mandalorian people to survive was to turn their back on everything they had once been, to reject the warrior identity that had defined them for millennia, to build a new society, one that valued peace over conflict, art over armor, and diplomacy over battle. It was this vision that led to the construction of Sundari, the capital city of the new Mandalorian movement. Sundari was not just a city, it was a manifesto, a physical declaration of Satine's vision for the future of Mandalore. Built within a massive, pressurized dome on Mandalore's otherwise uninhabitable surface, Sundari was a city of glass and light, of smooth white stone and perfect cubic geometry, of manicured gardens and open plazas, a stark, unrecognizable contrast to the jagged, volcanic wasteland that lay just outside its walls. Satine believed that if she could build a city that looked nothing like the Mandalore of old, she could build a people that looked nothing like the warriors of the past. She believed that architecture could reshape identity, that glass and mirrors could wash away the blood of centuries, that a beautiful, sterile utopia could reform a planet of killers. But what Satine failed to see, what she refused to acknowledge, was that her beautiful city was not a utopia. It was a prison, a gilded cage built to seal away the truth of who the Mandalorian people were. The fractured biomes of Sundari, the pressurized domes, the glass walls, they were never meant to protect the Mandalorian people. They were meant to hide the truth, to hide the fact that Satine's new Mandalore was built on a foundation of denial, that her pacifist vision was not embraced by all of her people, that the warrior spirit of Mandalore was not dead, it was just trapped, simmering beneath the surface, waiting for the moment to break free. The city she built was not a home for her people. It was a graveyard, waiting for the moment when the illusion would shatter. and the violence she had tried so hard to outrun would come flooding back in. This is the narrative foreshadowing that sits at the very heart of Sundari's design, and at the core of Satine Kryze's tragic arc throughout the Star Wars, the Clone Wars animated series. Every choice made in the construction of Sundari, every architectural decision, every line of the city's layout, foreshadows the inevitable collapse of the new Mandalorian movement. The smooth, unbroken lines of the city's buildings foreshadow the fragility of a society that refuses to acknowledge the cracks in its foundation. The transparent glass walls that line every street foreshadow the illusion of honesty and openness that Satine presented to the galaxy, while hiding the deep divisions and unrest that festered within her city. The pressurized dome that seals Sundari off from the rest of Mandalore foreshadows the way Satine sealed her people off from their own history, their own identity, and the harsh realities of the galaxy around them. To fully grasp this foreshadowing, we must look to the official Star Wars canon, to the episodes of the Clone Wars that first introduced us to Sundari and to Satine Kryze. The city makes its first appearance in Season 2, Episode 12 of the Clone Wars, titled The Mandalore Plot, which first aired in 2010. In this episode, Obi-Wan Kenobi is sent to Mandalore to investigate reports that the planet is aligning with the Separatists, and we are given our first look at the world Satine has built. The contrast between Sundari and every other Mandalorian settlement we had seen up to that point is stark and intentional. The Mandalorians we had known before were bounty hunters, warriors, clad in Beskar armor, living in rugged, fortified strongholds. Sundari is nothing like that. It is a city of beauty, of elegance, of peace. There are no weapons in the streets. No armor to be seen, save for the royal guards who serve the Duchess. No signs of the warrior culture that had defined Mandalore for millennia. At first glance, Sundari seems like a miracle, a beacon of peace in a galaxy torn apart by war, a shining example of what a society can become when it chooses to reject violence. But even in this first appearance, the cracks in the illusion are already visible. Obi-Wan Kenobi, who knows Satine better than almost anyone in the galaxy, sees through the facade immediately. He sees the tension in the streets, the quiet fear in the eyes of the citizens, the way the Royal Guard patrols every corner, enforcing the Duchess's strict laws against any hint of the old Mandalorian ways. He sees that the peace Satine has built is not organic. It is enforced. It is fragile. It is a house of cards, built on the suppression of the very identity of the people it claims to serve. And he knows, even in this first visit, that it will not last. This is the core of the narrative foreshadowing that defines Sundari. The city is a physical representation of Satine's fatal flaw, her refusal to acknowledge the truth of who her people are, her belief that she can erase thousands of years of history and culture with architecture and law, her hubris in thinking that she alone can reshape the Mandalorian people into something new, something that fits her vision of peace, regardless of what they actually want. The glass and mirrors of Sundari are not just building materials. They are a metaphor for the way Satine sees her world. She only wants to see the beautiful, peaceful reflection she has created. She refuses to look at the darkness that lies just beneath the surface. She refuses to see that the more she tries to seal away the Mandalorian people's warrior past, the more powerful it becomes, waiting for the moment to break free. We see this foreshadowing play out again and again in the episodes of the Clone Wars that follow. In Season 3, Episode 5, titled Corruption, we see that the beautiful, perfect city of Sundari is rotting from the inside out. The city's water supply is contaminated, the result of corruption and greed within Satine's own government, and the children of Sundari are falling ill. The episode is a perfect metaphor for the state of Satine's new Mandalore. The surface is beautiful, pristine, perfect, but the core is corrupted, poisoned, dying. The very systems that Satine built to protect her people are failing them, and she is so focused on maintaining the illusion of peace and perfection that she almost fails to see the danger until it is too late. This episode foreshadows the eventual collapse of Satine's government, not from an external threat, but from the rot within. The corruption that festers in the shadows of her perfect city, the very shadows she refuses to acknowledge. Another critical piece of foreshadowing comes in Season 4, Episode 14 of the Clone Wars, titled A Friend in Need. In this episode, Ahsoka Tano travels to Mandalore and comes face to face with the Death Watch, the traditionalist Mandalorian faction that has rejected Satine's pacifist vision and is plotting to overthrow her government. Ahsoka sees firsthand the violence that Satine has tried so hard to banish from Mandalore, still very much alive, just beyond the borders of Sundari. She sees that the Death Watch is growing in strength, in numbers, in support, because there are many Mandalorians who reject Satine's vision, who long for the old ways, who feel that their identity has been stripped from them by the Duchess's laws. This episode makes it clear that Satine's perfect city is not the whole of Mandalore. It is a bubble, a safe space, a fantasy, while the rest of the planet seethes with resentment and anger, waiting for the moment to tear down the walls of Sundari, and with it, the new Mandalorian movement. All of this foreshadowing leads us to the inevitable conclusion that sits at the heart of this story. Sundari was never going to survive. The new Mandalorian movement was never going to last. Satine's vision of a pacifist Mandalore, built on glass and mirrors, on denial of the past, was always destined to fail. Because you cannot build a society that rejects the very nature of the people who live in it. You cannot seal away a people's history, their culture, their identity behind glass walls and pressurized domes and expect it to stay hidden forever. You cannot build a home for a warrior race in a cage, no matter how beautiful that cage may be. All you can build is a graveyard. This is the truth that Satine Kryze refused to see until it was too late. The architectural desolation of Sundari, the way it cut the Mandalorian people off from their planet, their past, their very identity, did not protect them from violence. It guaranteed it. It created a pressure cooker of resentment, of anger, of unexpressed warrior spirit that would eventually explode and destroy everything she had built. The glass and mirrors she thought would reform her people only served to hide the truth from herself, until the moment the glass shattered and the graveyard she had built was revealed for what it truly was. In the chapters that follow, we will break down every layer of this tragedy. We will examine the geometric lie at the heart of Sundari's design, and how it was a deliberate rejection of everything Mandalore had ever been. We will explore the claustrophobia of the dome, and how trapping a warrior race in a rigid, sterile grid slowly eroded their spirit, even as it made them more volatile. We will unpack the fragility of Satine's forced peace, and how her pacifist vision became a fatal flaw in the very structure of her society. We will witness the moment the illusion shattered, when the Shadow Collective swept through Sundari, and the city's perfect geometry was consumed by chaos. And finally, we will examine the legacy of this broken biome, how the ruins of Sundari still shape the fate of Mandalore, even decades after the fall of the Republic, and what the Mandalorian people of today can learn from Satine Kryze's beautiful, tragic mistake.